Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hero News. Kia ora, Chewy, sir. How are you, love?
Kia ora, Pat. I am good. I am good. It's nice to be, I think, New Zealand's premium outlet for breaking news stories.
I know what
It's
you're
nice
talking
that
about.
we're getting a bit of attention, and we've obviously got some major corporate news outlets basically eating our lunch.
Yeah.
I saw this pop up on Radio New Zealand, mate. Look at this. Look at this. We're not accredited about it at all.
Oh, what?
This shiny fella.
We broke this news. So that's RNZ, yeah. I also got a message, or BHN got a message from Emma, and Emma said, hey, over on the Edge, they're talking about the shiny fella. So there's a picture, I think that's from the Edge's, thing.
They have followed through and actually ordered, or I guess summoned one of these monstrosities. So that's good.
Yeah. So the shiny fella is now world famous, not just in Dunedin, but that looks horrific. Egg. Do I like gherkins? They're actually, I don't know. I don't know if I could do it. I don't know. Maybe we'd have to try.
That's the way to think of it, Pat. It's definitely a gherkin delivery system.
It's my birthday next Friday, and it's yours like on the Tuesday afterwards. Maybe you and I should go on a birthday date and have one. Yes? No? Yes. No.
I don't want to commit to that.
Maybe we should see if they could deliver us one, and we'll do it during the show. Oh, that's not a bad idea. Bring one to the show. Okay. We'll keep talking. We're looking for a sponsor at the moment. Brought to you by the shiny guy.
The shiny fella.
Shiny fella brings you BHN, or BHN brought to you by shiny fella. Cool. Yeah, no, that's pretty funny. How's everything else? Rocking and rolling?
Yeah, everything's good, mate. Everything's good. Apart from everything.
Apart from everything. Everything's all apart from everything that's going on in the world at the moment. A lot of feedback from last night's show. Chippy on, media as well, contacting us and going, thanks, well done. And we're having a look at it, and I'm like, accreditation, accreditation. If you use it, accreditation, because you can see today he's talking about the Māori Party hubbub. I don't know if they're accusations or whatever. That's bigger in the press today, and we were talking to him about that last night. So speaking of that, tonight's show got a bunch of interesting stuff here tonight, guys. One of the more interesting things is we've got Tuku Morgan not coming on, but he was on that news show that Guyon Espiner does, 30 with Guyon Espiner, or Guyon Espiner has 30, or whatever the hell it's called. And he talked about co-governance and described what it was in a way that I had never heard described before. And it's epic. It's epic when you hear Tuku Morgan talk about it. He also talks about the treaty principle referendum. So we'll have a look at that as well. Definitely want to get some of that information. Also, I said this a couple of weeks ago, and I was thinking it yesterday. Where's Brooke Van Velden? Did you notice that we posted that picture of death in the background of two of our National Party leaders, and the next day Brooke Van Velden's in the news again? The next day, Chewy. I mean, like, coincidence?
Black though.
Yeah, maybe it's just a coincidence, but this changes to the Holiday Act. I always say this: the devil is in the detail. I need to know more. There's some things that this is always the dangerous thing when you hear something that someone says and you kind of go, is there a point there? But the devil is in the detail. We need to know much more about that. And also, because we didn't talk about it yesterday and we weren't here on Friday, I do want to have a look at one thing to do with Uncle Donald Trump tonight as well, because it's actually a story from last Friday on CNN. George Conway, in about 2 minutes, explains everything about why Trump is guilty and why the media and the right are just losing it. In fact, I don't think it's in the 2-minute clip that I'm going to show you, but one of the things he did say was, he goes, I sat in the courtroom every single day. I read every single transcript, and the media has done the world a disservice by talking about this as a 50-50. One of the guys who convicted him of guilt is someone who identifies as he only gets his news from Truth Central. Is that what it's called? Trump's media. That's the only place he gets his news, one of the jurors, and he found Trump guilty. So I'm going to play that just to kind of, I mean, what is there to debate? Not too much. A kind of sweaty, hot nightmare of a dream for some people, but I thought because we haven't really acknowledged it at all, because we had Tippy last night, we were here on Friday, I just want to show you something. It's a little quick clip as well. But look, to start off with, let's just rip into the show with an academic, a research development advisor, and also a cancer advocate. You've probably seen him on the news. He does all his practice on the news agencies, and he comes to the top, Chewy. Pitches to the top at the end and comes to the place to be. It's Malcolm Mulholland. Malcolm, welcome to the show.
Kia ora kōrua. I'm glad I made it to the top.
Made it to the top, man. It's all downhill from here.
I feel like we've exchanged the shiny fella, and then you've come to us. So yeah. I think that's a fair trade.
There you go. Now, Malcolm, you're getting a lot of press at the moment for being a cancer advocate, but you're also an academic. You're with Massey University, and this is one of your areas of research interest is Māori rugby. Like, what a cool thing to be. It's not to do really with our chat tonight, but can you give us that in 60 seconds? What's that all about?
Huia Publishers approached me back in 2007, I think it was. They said, hey, do you want to write a book on Māori rugby? My whānau are big fanatics of rugby. So I said, yeah, let's see if we can do it. Went around, toured the country, interviewed different players from different eras. It was a awesome experience. Man. And when the book came out, it did really well. So really chuffed to be a part of it.
Yeah, that's wicked. What a job. What would you get to get paid to travel around, Chewy? Yours would be something like, Chewy, you're going to write a book on punk rock, and you get paid to travel around and write on punk, and that'd be your dream, wouldn't it? What would mine be?
Yeah, I'd be pretty happy with that.
We could do like a shiny fellas tour of the world, find all the shiny fellas in every country and what their local version of it is. That would be pretty cool as well. We'd probably die on the way. Hey, Malcolm, thanks so much for joining us. You are talking a lot at the moment as a cancer advocate. Can you share with us the rationale behind why you've got that position? Why are you a cancer advocate? Why are you speaking out on behalf of cancer patients?
Yeah, so look, this journey for me started way back in 2018. That was when my late wife, Vicky, was diagnosed with advanced breast cancer. We were put in the position of needing a really expensive drug. So we did what many other people have done. We set up a petition, we went to Parliament, we marched, we did all those sorts of things to raise awareness. Eventually that drug was funded, but through that we had other people reach out and say we're in exactly the same predicament. And it wasn't just restricted to cancers. It was also people with a rare disorder or the chronic illness. So, for example, those with diabetes at the time were missing out on the latest and greatest when it came to treating their type 2 or the CGMs, which are hopefully going to be funded very soon. Right. So through that, we set up Patient Voice Aotearoa. I've been the chair, and we've been hammering away at the issue ever since.
The situation at the moment, there's what politicians say, there's absolute truth, and then probably somewhere in the middle is the reality to what the world is we live in. The current government courted the vote of people with cancer by telling them they would fund 13 new cancer treatments, named them, said what they were going to be. As someone who works in the industry or advocates in the industry, are you able to confirm that there were people who voted for National because of that one promise? Was that out there?
Oh, without a doubt. There were numerous people who voted accordingly, and not just the patient themselves, but their family and their communities. So, I mean, look, we never know the exact numbers, but it was certainly a big election pledge. And as a result, a lot of people voted for National, many of whom would have never voted for National before, by the way.
We kind of wondered that last night, Chewy, but we needed someone to confirm it like you, but we thought that actually made logical sense. I've been back and looked through a few of the transcripts, and again, I said this earlier, the devil's in the detail. They said they're going to fund it. I don't know if they said they were definitely going to fund it in this budget. Do you get this?
They did.
They did. Okay.
Yep.
So they said they were going to fund it in the first budget. I had to look around and couldn't see that. So you can confirm that?
Yeah, it was in their manifesto.
Okay, so it's a broken promise. So that's actually unquestionable. If they said they were going to put it into their first budget, fund it in their first budget, and they didn't. Have you had any interactions with the government, representatives of the government, as to why they broke that promise?
No, not on this issue, not at all. So I haven't heard boo, and I think that's probably been one of the things that people feel let down about, because their communication has been absolutely appalling.
I'm pretty disappointed in. I mean, we're not the kind of group, Malcolm, that goes, "Oh, bloody mainstream media losers," but I do get disappointed when I'm watching Christopher Luxon on Breakfast basically go, "It's so unfair, and we are going to fund it, and they're saying mean things about us, and we will get it done." That's the kind of vibe, the sort of victim mentality is coming out of Luxon, and the journalist is going, "Hey, Chris, can you look down that camera and talk to the person who, because of the delay in funding, is now going to die sooner, and explain to them, landlords over cancer treatments." Like, he's not really having his feet held to the fire. They ask the question and they move on. What's the most frustrating thing you see in this whole situation?
Probably the fact that they've broken this promise above all other promises made. This is a lot different to saying I'm going to build a road here, or I'm going to build an extra classroom over there. Lives are not at stake when you make those promises, but when you go out and you say, I'm going to fund this particular drug, and many cancer patients with those different diseases knew that it was their drug, by the way. It was no great secret. They voted, and they expected by 1 July that they would gain access to that drug. So what I can't quite get my head around is, why have they not been able to deliver on that promise? They've had months to think about this. They've had months in power, and yet we're still none the wiser.
It's 70 million a year, 280 over 4 years, and they've given $2.9 billion back to landlords. The people you're speaking to and advocating for and talking to one-on-one, what are their reactions? What are they saying?
Why aren't you prioritizing my life? It's simple as that. And, I don't have an answer for them. That's something they're going to have to ask this government. I mean, to be fair, the same question was given to the previous government as well. There were a lot of petitions that were delivered, and Labor did put some funding, or more funding, into Pharmac, but still a lot more needed to be done. And I think, even though it's not ideal, and politicians should not be telling Pharmac what drugs they should and should not be funded, we're in such a crisis now where we need some type of political intervention, because the list of drugs that Pharmac wants to fund is simply getting larger by the day.
How does that work? Because we're told on one hand politicians aren't supposed to know what drugs Pharmac have on their list, so they can't then be influenced by lobbyists or whatever else. And Luxon naming these 13 drugs, like, where's the line between what the government can do to direct Pharmac and what it seems most of the time they should be doing, which is staying independent?
Yeah, look, ideally they should be funding Pharmac to the levels that it needs to be funded. So we know, for example, right now, Pharmac only receives 0.4% of the GDP. It should be around 1.4%. We haven't reported our figures to the OECD since 2007. So it's been, if you like, our little dirty secret. And so if you address that issue, then you wouldn't have the need for politicians to come out and go, I'll fund this drug, or I'll fund that drug. And both sides do it. Labor did it in 2017 with PrEP. And when they got into power, PrEP was funded. And we could see a pattern of behaviour, if you like, during the last government, where we would have high profile protests, and over a period of time, that drug would actually be funded and would leapfrog other drugs that have been on that list for longer. Now, that's not an ideal situation. And I'm not taking away anything from the fact that those certain drugs were funded. That was a good decision, don't get me wrong, but the process was broken.
How much of the blame for what is happening today do you think, as an advocate, lies at the feet of Labor? Because you can fairly say they hadn't funded these 13 drugs, they were new to be funded. How much rests with them, or is really the anger all about it's because National made the promise that they were coming and then broke it?
Yeah, look, there's definitely a lot of anger along those lines. It's the fact that National went out, they said, hey, these are the 13 we want to fund, and then they've said, let's push pause. We don't know when that's going to happen. So, you know, a lot of people feel cheated around that. But, you know, I think both sides of the fence, the political fence, have each had a hand to play in the underfunding of FARMAC over the best part of 2 decades now. And that's why we're in the predicament we're in. So, you know, there is a lot of anger, yes, out there towards the nets, but we need to come up with a solution for a long-standing problem.
So how much is 0.4% of the GDP? Like, what is that amount that it's funded?
Oh, I think from memory, it's about 1.5 bill.
So multiply that by 3, it would be about 1.4, give or take. So it should be sitting at around 4.5 billion, you reckon? That should be what FARMAC is funded. That, and when you say that's what they should be funded, based on what?
Based on the OECD average.
Okay.
So we've seen reports come out that, you know, tell us we're at the bottom of the OECD. We're 32 of 32 countries, 32nd, I should say, of 32 countries. Even Australia is not average by the way of the OECD, but they still fund a shitload more in medicines than what we do because they get a lot more funding.
Okay, so what they should be doing is funding it about 3 billion more, which ironically is about how much they're giving back to landlords. Crazy. Isn't that crazy? Isn't these strange coincidences all happening? What can we do, those of us who, I mean, everyone's touched by cancer at some stage.
Yep.
Everyone, like 100% of people know someone, have someone in their family, knew someone, work with someone that is touched by cancer. This does not touch anybody. But for those of us who aren't impacted directly today, what should we be doing to help the situation?
I think you have to just make your thoughts known. You know, when you see the politicians, you know, buttonhole them. Tell them what you really think. Be upfront with them and share your stories as well. We find that a very, you know, empowering tool. One where the patient has power over, you know, the story that's being told and the reason why they need a particular drug funded. So it's certainly about sharing information. The other thing I would say in relation to cancer is that we know right now there's about 1 in every 3rd person will have an encounter with cancer. Now that's about to rise next decade to 1 in every 2. Now that's a pretty scary statistic.
Do we know why? What's the reason that's jumping up by 17 odd percent?
I suspect it's to do with lifestyle factors and diet in particular. And you know, we live in a fast food world environment, so to speak. It's not just one reason, but it's a collective of a number of reasons. And so, you know, when we think we know somebody now, we really are going to know somebody in the very near future.
Relating this back to rugby, because that's all I can ever do, Malcolm. You know, the government at the moment are on their own try line. There is hard pressure coming on them. Maybe they were stupid enough to think that this wouldn't be so much, you know, there wouldn't be so much outright attack on them for this one decision. And as you say, the difference from a road is that my uncle, my auntie, my mum, my sister, my child may not be here once they pull the thumb out their ass to eventually fund these. We hope. Yeah, I just want to make sure that we can always keep it in the forefront of our minds. And I wonder if the government being on that try line, we are hard on attack. Is this a good time? Is there any particular thing we can do right now that will help that attack, for want of a better word, score a try? Sorry, ridiculous analogies, but help this get over the line.
Yeah, look, it's a really good question. And again, I think it's just all about applying pressure. I don't think for a minute, and I can't quite believe this politically, that they saw the optics of this, that they thought it through and they were to some extent.
How could they not see this? How could they not see that this would be the worst? I mean, like I'm now putting my marketing hat on, going the worst PR decision they could make.
Totally with you on that, Pat. And, you know, call it what you will, they have totally misread the room on this because it's such a personal, emotional issue. You are literally talking about life and death.
Yeah.
And, you know, very rarely will a government make a decision where it has a direct impact on somebody's life. And that's what they've missed.
If people want to find out more, Malcolm, they want to read more, find out more, where's the best place they can go to connect with you guys?
So we have a Facebook site. That's probably the best place, just Patient Voice Aotearoa. We also have a website, mylifematters.org, and they can find us there.
So I'm just going to bring it up and show people so they can check it out for themselves. My computer's deciding to go on a bit of a go slow. Patient Voice Aotearoa. There's a lovely face. There it goes. Patient Voice Aotearoa. If they want to find out more,
that's us.
And you can get you through there. And look, I mean, it's very not strange, but it's very rare that the nation tends to speak with one voice. Like, we often joke about how Winston Peters and David Seymour have done such a brilliant job bringing Māori together. Probably what they weren't planning, but they've done such a very good job at it. And it feels like in this particular instance, there aren't too many people going, sweet as. It's not fun. That, like, it feels like this has brought together the majority of sane people with one voice. And one in two people, you say, but as we say, it affects everybody. We'll only try and help amplify what's going on right now. And thanks for what you're doing, and thanks for your time tonight.
Thanks, Pat. Thanks for having me.
All right, Malcolm. All the best. All right. I think there's someone sitting there in the waiting room waiting to come back in. Kia ora, Chewy.
Hello. I didn't want to be rude and crash back into the middle of your questions.
Do you want to add anything to the end of that?
Yeah, look, there's just one thought, and like with a lot of stuff that has come out that has been promised, or hasn't been promised from this government, is that some of them has very clear political lines. Cancer isn't one of them. Cancer doesn't give a fuck what color you vote for.
Yeah.
And I really think, as you guys were saying, this is something that is extremely personal, is a broken promise, and will affect people on all sides of society potentially. Again, the optics, they're not good at spotting this sort of stuff. And for them to go, we want it to happen, we want to find the funding. Motherfucker, you just did a budget. Yeah. You just worked out a budget, and it would have been on a legal pad somewhere in the room, I assume, of like, these are the things that we've got to find a way to get this in the budget, because I went on TV and I said that we were going to do it.
Well, I missed this in the manifesto as well, and not that I was corrected tonight, but clarification tonight. Because people are now saying, well, I haven't broken their promise, but I didn't read that, I didn't see that, I didn't find that. But if it's literally in the manifesto, then it's inexcusable, unarguable that it's a broken promise. Now, even if they fund it in 6 months, still a broken promise.
Can you imagine Willis just really hard with the fucking calculator out and just working it all out? Luxon pops in his head and, hey, you're not going to make me look like an idiot over the cancer drugs, are you? And Willis is going, no, I wouldn't do that. Wow.
I just don't.
And it's got a death toll. So that makes it even more embarrassing.
Well, that's the thing. Like I said, please, look, we know that media companies watch this. We've now been told by insiders how they watch what we do. So we know you guys are watching. Nail the fucker down. Mr. Luxon, look down that camera and talk to the family of a person who's going to die in the delay you guys are taking for pulling your thumb out your ass. What do you say to that person who, rather than perhaps getting another year, 2, 5 with their family member, will be planning a funeral? What do you say to that person, Mr. Luxon? I mean, honestly, it's the only question, because they have to be called on it. They have to be called on their bullshit. They have to be called to account. Yes, they have started taking responsibility by saying, we had to make choices. But when you describe what the choices are, they go, I reject that. I reject that. No. These are what the choices are. They got to be nailed down. And like we said, we don't get the access because we're not worth their time. People who do, who are watching, who will get messaged about this, nail them down. Get it, set it up. So I would love to do this. Get a cancer patient in to talk to Mr. Luxon face to face.
No one put them in this position. No one. This is, to borrow a sporting analogy, Pat. Be proud of me. This is an unforced error.
Yeah.
No one, like, they said that they were going to do it. They put it in their manifesto. They forgot about it because they're in government now. They don't need to keep track of these things. They don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
And they made the hard choice, money to landlords, nothing for anybody else. Cancer patients, everybody else. Maybe if you're a landlord who also has cancer, you could look at it that way. But outside of that, no, don't care. You won't be around for the next election.
2 more things as well. two more things. And I know some people want to push back on this, but I'm sorry. I'm right. You're wrong. Landlords didn't need this money. They didn't need it. Landlords weren't going, oh my God, I can't afford to do this anymore. I have to sell all my houses. Landlords weren't doing that. Landlords didn't need it. This is a bonus on top of them. Yeah. And the second thing I forget. It's gone out of my head. There was two very good points I was going to mention.
They have chosen to be pro-tobacco.
Yeah.
And pro-cancer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's the hard choices that they're making.
Pro-petroleum, the EV stuff.
Yeah.
Honestly. I do wish I'd remembered that second point because it was very good before I got distracted. That's why I got to write stuff down.
You can put it back in post.
Yeah. Or I'll manage to squeeze it in like I did Elvis last night, and it'll make complete sense at a later time. Yeah, just when you said pro tobacco, I thought, yeah, perfect time to put it up. Perfect time. I think I remember what I was going to say. Hang on, it's right there. It's right at the edge of my brain. That's it. I remember it. Here's my second point. See, I told you to come back. Is that if there are 3% of people out there going, whatever, no big deal, tomorrow you might get diagnosed with one of the cancers on that list.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, there but for the grace of God go I. And I don't think there would be many people out there doing this, but for the few that are, shrugging their shoulders going, well, tomorrow it may impact you. That's one of the saddest things in the world. It's kind of the opposite of empathy, that you shouldn't have to experience something or be impacted by it to feel about it and feel for it. Right? That's the narcissistic tendency that unless it impacts me, I don't need to, or I can't have empathy for it. That was worth waiting for that second point. I thought that was okay. Maybe just me. Yes, there's a bunch of super chats and stuff there. Let's get to some of these because some people are giving us, thank you, Mr. Arvids, a shiny fella fund. And Peter Sim also says, have a gherkin on me. Voltaire, according to
on you.
Cheeky. Though, you know what I mean? When I said before, it's like I watched that clip back because I was editing today with Luxon on breakfast today, and it really felt like he was going, and we're doing our best, and they're being really mean, and they're saying mean things, and we're gonna. It had that vibe to it. It was really quite. He's not the victim here. It's literally the cancer sufferers who will die. They are the literal victims here, Mr. Luxon. Ruru says, those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. Voltaire. Thank you for the super chat there, Ruru. Gareth says, just my small donation towards buying Chewy a new webcam. I've spoken to Chewy about this. Maybe we'll talk this weekend, Chewy. Thank you, Gareth.
We're working on it. Yeah, look, what it is having a whole bunch of tabs stacked open that I want to bring up during the show, and then dragging them from one screen to the other. And then sometimes my computer goes, oh shit, what? No. And it might be because I have two monitors of two different resolutions. I don't know.
Dave Monster says Luxon promised not to change sick leave as well. Yeah, we're going to get to that story shortly. You wouldn't. Had a late fee. Delayed attendance fee from Mr. Kooky Nick. Campbell says, anyone else feel like winning lotto and paying for these cancer drugs for those so wrongly neglected by this government of fast-tracking fools? Absolutely. I mean, it's ridiculous because it won't happen. There's probably 43 million may not cover it, but mate, if you've won lotto tonight, please do something to help at least someone in a vulnerable state. Doesn't have to be every single person. It's impossible, but please do something, as a force for good. Frosty for the $5. Thank you for the super chat. The people who are uncaring about the cancer drugs are the types of people who haven't had to struggle a single day in their marshmallowy lives. And finally, you go.
I wouldn't want to wish cancer on the worst person in the world, and we know who we're talking about when I say that. Like it's a horrible, insidious thing to have to go through, and I can't even put myself in the mind of someone that's having to deal day to day with that. When I went away to Colorado to see that band, a couple that very kindly drove us around, they were in one case a cancer survivor, and the other one living with cancer.
Ugh.
and the drugs that he takes every month keep it at bay and help him stay healthy-ish, but it's not making the cancer go away. It's just hitting a pause on it.
Do you know what he's got? Is it prostate cancer? Do you know what he's got?
No, I think it's a
Doesn't matter.
I'm not sure, honestly, and I wouldn't want to take a guess at it. But yeah, and he's doing that in the American health system. So he's lucky that he's a firefighter and that's covered under their insurance and all of that sort of thing. But just speaking with him and being friends with him on Facebook and that sort of thing, and just seeing the way he has a very bleak sense of humor at times about it. He lost his sister to the same sort of cancer, so it's very, very real. And like I said, I can't put myself in that mind. And I think when Luxon goes out and he fake empathizes with these people, it says that it's such a hard choice, and woe is him. You signed up for this job to be a leader in a country. That's not a walk in the park job. You have to make, that's at the top of the job description, the ability to make hard decisions.
Well, I also think that, and we talked a lot about this through COVID, in my opinion, the number one job of a government is keeping its citizens alive. That's the number one job, keeping its citizens safe and alive. And this would be the opposite. So
they will fall on the line of their profit margins of an Excel spreadsheet over actual people every fucking time. That's everything that we've had these last 6 months they have been weighing up people's lives and the effects that they're having on those people's lives, whether the public servants or Māori or both, or if you've got cancer or all of these things, and they're going over and they're putting it into a calculator and they're going, yeah, but we could save some money here.
It's a little bit like the insurance companies used to. I'm not suggesting it happens today. If they were going to do like a recall or a payout, that weigh up, like a car industry, like if there was a fault in the seatbelt, how many people will this kill? What will that cost us versus the recall? We won't do a recall. That kind of got that kind of vibe to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And there's a point where you just go, you know what? I don't mind if my tax dollars go towards keeping someone's mum or their nana or their sister or their dad or brother alive and giving him quality of life. Like that's fine. Why would you argue with that? Baffles me.
All right. Tafiri says, even if it did put downward pressure on the rents, it doesn't. But even if it did, I would rather people got their cancer meds over my lowered unit. Yeah, I think that's the thing, that most people would be the same. I mean, I think that the free prescriptions were a good idea. However, if we're all paying $5 like we got told, again, so these things can be funded, fine. I'll cop that. Fine. As long as that the vulnerable, which they supposedly were still able to get free ones, I'm okay with that. So yeah, I think a lot of people with Tafiri would be in that similar situation as well. Daily Reminder says, Mike, worst human Seymour. We've also got another one here. I think that's I wouldn't even wish cancer on David S., who by the way is the worst example of a human being. Stephen Lennon, thank you for your super chat. Awesome guys. Thanks for supporting Māori issues. I guess we just do what we can. And we never put ourselves out there as the people who understand, which is why we bring on people who know. Because we just a couple of buffheads in Dunedin that like to spin shit. Dave Monster, not literally, not like plate spinning and it's shit. I'm not. That would be weird.
Certainly an image. Thank you, Pat.
Thanks. Act the party of cons with smug faces, says Dave. Thank you for your super chat. That is all the super chat.
Yeah, speaking of acts, look, I remember. I think it was either immediately pre or immediately post budget that there was an ACT MP that was basically suggesting that Farm Act should weigh in whether the person was going to be productive when it came to their decisions over what medications to buy. Just let that simmer in your mind there a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, oh, this person needs help. Okay, are they going to be able to man the machine down at the factory? Or are they just going to be a drag on our economy? If they're a drag on the economy, maybe we should just let nature take its course, eh? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah. I guess if they're being true libertarians, I can understand that, but it doesn't mean it's any better. It also does stinks of that idea of money, you know, because that's you don't fund them if they can't provide. If you're someone who's 17, you've built up a massive amount of fortune, and you are a pretty useless human being after that, well, you can pay for yourself. That's fine. So that puts that value on life. That if you can pay for it, you're good, and if you can't and you're not worth anything to us, nah, you can head off. People are talking about Māori issues. Why don't we do this now then? Because this is really interesting. So if you haven't seen this, I would encourage you to go and see it. It's at RNZ. There's this new show that Guyon Espiner does called 30 with Guyon Espiner, where he talks for only 30 minutes. And of course, it came up in the conversation around Tuku Morgan around his underpants. We all know that story. And he said some really interesting things. Like, I was like, that's an interesting. We're not playing this tonight, but I'll just kind of summarize it. He was talking about how he is not apologetic for it at all. He had budget. He was allowed to spend it on clothes, and he totally sees it as something that Labor got in and had a crack at him for and used it against him. He spent $4,000 overall, apparently. And he says at the same time, some people who I was working with are spending $4,000 on a suit. It's just a different take, a really interesting take. If you know a bit about the background of that, you should check it out. But let's have a look at Tuku Morgan today, and the two things we're going to cover off. You can see we're basically 23 minutes through the show, so there's a whole lot here that you can go and check out for yourself, which is quite interesting as well. We're going to talk about the treaty principles referendum. That's the first part of it, and then we're going to get to the bit I talked about earlier, which is him describing co-governance in a way that I'd never heard described before, and I thought was just fascinating. And not just fascinating like, oh, this is a good watch, but like a holy crap, that's really good. It's really interesting. Let's have a look. This is Treaty Principles Referendum, Tuku Morgan with Guyon Espiner.
Talk about some of them. ACT wants to rewrite the treaty principles bill.
Absolute nonsense.
The principles is established by judges, politicians, lawyers, etc., are basically partnership, participation, and protection. David Seymour, the ACT leader, says he wants to give the public a say. What is wrong with that in your view?
Yeah, well, he can look. The document is about a partnership. The treaty is about partnerships. All right, Māori and the Crown. Simple as that. You can't give the same rights to an immigrant to this country that has been long entrenched, not only in law but in our history since 1840. So while Seymour tries to
let's unpack that for a second.
Well, I don't think you really. I mean, no offense to Guyon, you don't really need to. That's perfect. That's your answer. Ironically, that sounds very similar to what we've been talking about to do with contract law. The contract signed between two parties, you can't just choose to insert, 4 million other people into that contract because you want to. I mean, we are going to keep going, but I think he's just laid it out, Chewy. He nailed it down. It's like there's a contract, there's an agreement between two parties. Conversation over.
Yep. No, I agree.
Sorry, because you drifted off, but what I heard was you can't give the same rights to an immigrant to New Zealand, as opposed to someone who's indigenous to New Zealand. Is that what you're saying?
No. Because what Seymour was saying is that actually every other New Zealander has the same rights as Māori.
Yes,
that's a nonsense.
So what are you saying, that other New Zealanders don't have the same rights as Māori?
Under the treaty, in terms of our rights to whenua, to the taiao, to the environment, all of those things that are safeguarded in the treaty are things that belong to Māori and to the Crown.
So, and he directs.
So where this gets caught up, and David Seymour will spin this, is talking about rights. Same rights under the law, same rights under the treaty. If you want to get away from what some people think is a controversial race element, same rights under a contract. Of course you don't. you don't have the same rights under the contract I have with my bank. It's between me and the bank, you know. And so there will be a hang up on that word of rights, but you could look at it this way: we have the agreement. We have it. So what we've agreed to, you don't get to jump in on. That's the phrasing that he's using for rights. But you know what they're going to do? They're going to jump on that and go, well, Tuku Morgan says they've got special rights.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
Well, but
and that's my issue there is I can see what he's saying and I agree. But it is phrased in such a way that it is going to get twisted and held up and all of that sort of thing. It's like the agreement is between Māori and the Crown.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be up for discussion and that sort of thing. And then when Seymour drags in, so an immigrant to this country doesn't have any rights. No, it's not that at all. Because it's not a treaty between Māori and everybody else that came after. It's the Crown, and the Crown gives non-Māori the rights that they have negotiated in that treaty. That's what I don't see why it's so hard for people to get their fucking head around.
Well, people either play dumb, so they're dishonest actors, or they are dumb, and they can't understand that the word rights has been used slightly differently. Just like last week, the word strike was used slightly differently. A strike, Māori were just saying we're just walking off our job. Strike. No, not an official strike where the union has to. That's not it. We've used it in a different way. If we stop and think about the word rights in this instance are talking about the agreement we have, the conditions that only we are allowed to satisfy under this contract, under the treaty. That's different from your rights out in society to to not be discriminated against based on your gender or whatever. It can be used slightly differently, and this is a big thing in the world at the moment. And I've had this conversation lots of times on this program, so I won't bang on about it, but I firmly believe dishonest actors and not very smart people are using this current climate, this current day and age we're living in, where there is a very fast moving change to language, and they're not acknowledging the change. They're saying this is what it meant 5 years ago. Now, I'm not saying that's happening with the word rights, but if you're thinking about gender issues, what is it? What gender is this? What gender is that? And the example that we've talked about, Mount Taranaki used to be Mount Egmont, and then it changed the name of it, and there was a language change, and now no one really knows of it as Mount Egmont because there's been a transitional change through years into a new thing. The word fire, sure, you ask them what the word fire means, they'll go, well, it's a flame. No, it means good. The word choice, it means good. What's picking, so the way we use language is very different, and language is in a very volatile state at the moment, and it's changing a lot. And some people are going, well, this is what it says in the dictionary, and other people are going, well, this is how we use it in society. The word strike last week was how it was being used in society, maybe not the dictionary definition. And I believe, my opinion is, the way we're talking about rights in this instance, it's more like how we're using it colloquially in society as opposed to the dictionary definition of it. It's the conditions under that contract that they have the rights to that no one else do. Chewy, you come along to my place, you don't have the rights to get the same interest rate with my bank that I've negotiated. I've got that right, but it doesn't mean you don't have rights. But I've negotiated a special rate because the girl had a crush on me. But doesn't mean you get to have it, and you get to push it onto my mortgage or my contract with the bank and saying, I want that too. No, I've negotiated that right, that condition. And I'm the only one that's allowed that. Māori have negotiated these conditions, and they are entitled, to use Mr. Luxon's favorite word, to those conditions. Fair?
I think a perfect example of that change in language is something, I know it's been bubbling away, but I really saw it come to the fore with the recent hikoi. The term tangata tiriti. Tangata whenua, tangata tiriti. I really like that. Like, it's not like, because Pākehā is a different thing. But tangata tiriti brings so many people under that umbrella and just makes it really clear what the two parties are. I do not have a problem with the special relationship that Māori have with this country being the first people here. That needs to be recognised. I love saying this in comment section. There's someone in the chat that's going to love this as well. Second place does not generally mean you get naming rights. It's silly.
What
If you
you've
want
just
to
said,
call it Mount Egmont, all that signals to me is that you are some dusty old boomer-minded dinosaur that can't adapt to change and thinks that just from such a white supremacist point of view that you can't even get out of your own way to realize what decade you're in and look at a map and see where in the world you live. If you want to Mount Egmont, you can get in a boat and you can go to a different country, point at a mountain, you can call it Mount Egmont. You see how that flies.
the conversation that you've just kind of said there about, you know, the original conversation and what was happening back in the day and who was here first kind of flows quite well into the next part of this conversation, which we're not quite to yet, but about the co-governance. So let's get to the end of this clip where they're still talking about the treaty principles referendum, then we'll go on to the co-governance bit.
He challenges that, doesn't he? Because under his rewrite, the government would have the right to govern all New Zealanders, probably not controversial, but he goes on to say that the government would honour all New Zealanders in chieftainship of land and property. New Zealanders would all be equal under the law and have the same rights and duties.
But that's there anyway. You know, that's there in the current statute as you know, here and now. What he's trying to do is to manipulate a historic agreement so that actually it's shared on the same basis as that which was promised to Māori.
So what would be the impact if he was successful? He probably won't be because National said he's not going to support it.
Yeah.
But what would the impact be, do you think, if this did go to a referendum?
Yeah, I think that you will see action in this country, protest in this country, opposition in this country, never seen in the history of this country before.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there are those of us who you know, will not be, that we will not sit still and remain idle. That when you got this sort of nonsense.
So are you promising
bullshit.
/ warning of this regardless, or when this bill comes up for discussion?
If this bill is passed and it goes beyond the first reading, they'll be held to play. Simple as that. They'll be held to play. It's an attack on an agreement that was enshrined in a trusting way by those rangatira in 1840. And yet you got a political idiot here who is trying to modernize a document that actually will make 1840 a nullity.
So there you go, Chewy. There's part one. I know we talked quite a lot through it. Is there anything else you want to add to it, or should we go to the co-governance?
No, look, I think he's just echoing what we and others have said, is that I think Seymour is really underestimating how much feeling there is out there. And I think the two protests that we have had this year are warning shots.
Yeah. Yeah. I also think that the government, especially after this cancer, payment thing, will be very, is gun shy the right term? Gun shy? Of getting into another battle that will be, I think, very, very poorly. Let me put it this way. If it goes beyond the first reading, I think you might start to think about a one-term government. Like that might be the straw. If you want to activate Māori and I guess people supporting Māori, people who are buffers, then that's the way to do it. You want to kind of guarantee yourself to be, well, I can't say guarantee, but to be a one-term government, my friends, that might be it. So I don't think it'll go past it, because as stupid as National seems to be, not even understanding the flack they were going to get for the cancer treatments fiasco, I don't think they'll be stupid enough to put our founding document and the way we read it to a referendum. I mean,
yeah.
So, the what is it? The document of independence. What's it called in America? The amendment number, the second amendment, the whatever that's called. Let's put it to a vote to see if we still want to have it to be relevant. What? It's just ridiculous. Hey,
like I honestly, I think the only way that they would be able to realistically move the treaty from the position that it is at the moment is go, well, we're going to become a republic. And then that's something that a lot on the right won't want to touch either. But it's just, if you go for a republic and go, well, you know, the treaty was an agreement between the crown and now we're not having the crown as the head of state, and you could do some fucking legal flimflammery around that. But that's a whole different fucking thing.
Yeah, there is an unfortunate reality if that was to happen. So, you know, when you go into business, you know what a royalty is? It's where you get like a little, like if I invent something and and a company buys it off me and they're going to give me $1 for every unit they sell, that's a royalty. If that company then gets bought out by a bigger company, the bigger company has to come in and negotiate with me to get rid of my royalty because that's a part of the original agreement. So if that happened, if we went to a referendum, what would have to happen is Māori would have to basically be consulted and come to an agreement as to why they were going to give up their side of the original contractual agreement. You couldn't just say the government's deciding that's what we're going to be at, because there's a founding document that's an agreement between two parties. One party can't just decide to go, what, we're a Republican from now, a Republic from now. So therefore, if that did happen, Māori would have to be on board. And why would they be on board? Who knows the conditions that would bring on board. That's one of the reasons I don't think, certainly in my lifetime, I don't think we'll be a Republic, because what are Māori going to have to negotiate out of or get from that agreement to kind of make that agreement null and void and move on to the new one, into the new land. Anyway, look, speaking of, let's do this now, because this is a really, really, I know it's only 2.5 minutes. I don't think I'll interrupt it. I'll try not to. So it's very, 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 very good look at what co-governance is, as is seen by Tuku Morgan. Let's have a look.
A lot of the controversy about this subject comes from this idea of co-governance, and Labor got very tied up in that. What does co-governance mean to you?
Partnership. We've had partnership
Here's the thing,
on the Waikato River
sure.
Since 2010. 2010 has been in existence under what we call the Waikato River Authority, where there are equal number of iwi and equal number of Crown representatives, and it's worked well.
How far should that go? Because some people look at this as a maths equation and go, well, 17% of the population Māori roughly, yet should there be?
Yeah, but half the original contract, 50-50 in the contract, half the original agreement. In fact, when the agreement was signed, we're the majority.
50-50 representation on some issues.
Here's the problem.
How far does that go for you?
Yeah, well, here's the problem that we have in terms of history. In our iwi, 1.3 million acres were taken, rendering our iwi landless. Is there any is there any justice to that? Built on the back of that disposition of the theft of our lands, is that in our region here and now, nearly 30% of this country's GDP comes out of Mairohe. 75% of the water that comes into Auckland comes out of the Waikato and its associated the water bodies. And yet Waikato Tānu has been a mere spectator as successive councils and government have degraded the river to the extent that the river itself is a degraded body of water where we can't even take food or swim in it, safe from Ngaruawai all the way down to the port. Now you talk about justice. You talk about this 15% of the total population is absolute nonsense. I'm talking about justice here, and the injustice, the jagged edge of injustice has treated my people badly, and we've been on the wrong side of history. And so when we cut deals and we are smart enough to get these negotiations around co-governance and partnership, we should actually be applauded for taking a much more innovative approach, because in the last 100 years, we've watched councils degrade our water.
All right. You've called this our rangiriri moment, a time.
That's it, the last conversation we'll leave out. So, you know, I remember, I think it was Moana Tūwhare when she came on one day talking to us about co-governance and said that we've got it upside down at the moment because we think about co-governance as non-Māori in positions of power inviting Māori to the table, whereas co-governance based on the treaty was actually Māori saying to non-Māori, you can come to our table. So actually the document was signed and the agreement of this land was Māori offering co-governance to non-Māori. And just because, again, back to the contractual agreement, just because now non-Māori are the majority, you don't get to flip. You don't get to flip the script all of a sudden and say, oh, you know that contract we signed? We're just going to do it the other way now. And another one, just hearing Tuku talk about what they've given up and what they've had taken and what, still no shared ownership of these things. I just think it's a really interesting perspective. Chewy.
Yeah, look, we've mentioned this before, and I think it was a clip that we played. What's good for Māori is good for all of us, and I think there is nothing more clear than that, than the state of our rivers, the state of our natural environment. The European-centric way of doing things that we have had in this country for over 100 years has got us to this point where we have artificially fertilized the land, we have grazed it, we have burned our forests down, we have ruined our water table with nitrates, we have ruined our water quality to the point where it becomes an election issue that you can't swim in a river like we used to be able to when I was a kid. Those systems that we have built and a version of capitalism that we have has cost us all of those things. And I think that is the big driver behind my support for a lot of what Māori are asking for here, is that Europeans had their shot. This is what it's got us here. Where is the harm in trying a different way? When we talk about European supremacy or white supremacy or that sort of thing, it is the assumption that the way that we have done things and the way that we have structured this country is the best way to do it. And I think there is so much evidence out there that it's not. And if you know that it's not, and you know that it's not working, but you keep doing it, then that's on you. My whole thing is the people that were here, the people that signed that document and said, hey, look, king, queen, whatever, fucking pull your people into line. Here's the agreement. Then they get a say. And people talk about it's not democratic. It's still democratic. People still vote. The people don't change. People will make their feelings heard. But at the moment, what we have is we have too many voices shouting down Māori, saying that there's not enough of you, that your opinions don't matter, that you're not European, you just wouldn't understand how superior we are and how superior the way that we do things is. It's just beyond you. Like, every time you hear that, you see it in the news all the time, Māori asking for something. No, but it's so different from the way that we do it. See it for what it is. It's laziness, it's lack of forethought, and it's just people being stuck in a rut of thinking and are too fearful that the needle will move too far one way and suddenly we'll be deprived. If deprived means that we get our natural environment back and we get clean rivers back and we have a society that's not at each other's necks, that we don't have 2/3 of the people in this country shitting on the other third and going, there is a problem. You're right. There's problems for Māori. Lots of you are in prison. Lots of you die early. Lots of you aren't hitting educational markers that we have set. You're not interacting well with the society that we have imported, and that is your fault. Fucked.
Yeah, something that just occurred to me as well while you were talking. Talking about swimming in streams when you were a kid, that you can't be a swangam anymore. there's not really a absolute answer as to how long Māori have been here, but people seem to say kind of between 800 and 1200 years. So let's call it 1,000 years. So that means 30 years ago, all the way back 1,000 years before that, the rivers were fine. You could swim in them, you could eat out of them, and the last 30 years has been what's happened to them to make them degraded, as Tuku was saying, or poisonous would be another word. So there's like 1,000
Literally
years
poisonous.
of being able to do it, and in the last 30 to 50 years, nah, screwed from here on in. So
nitrate levels in Canterbury rivers, that's a ticking time bomb for our public health system.
Yeah.
We're going to have people that have bore water supplies getting cancers. Oh, we're talking about cancer again. Funny. You know, my family's batch, where I used to be able to swim in the river, and my grandfather would fish from the river. We have to take bottled water out now.
Mm.
It used to be surrounded by sheep farming. Now it's surrounded by dairy farming. And nobody's really connecting those two dots, that the alluvial plains of Canterbury and the really shallow water table, and suddenly we're over irrigating the land so cows can live there, has fucked everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, this is a bit of my nerd hat coming on now, but just to the formatics of what we just watched. Tuku, amazing, not happy with Guy and cutting him off there. As ridiculous as it sounds, we've talked about this before. Radio stations who think they can make digital content are just making radio for the internet. They're not making digital content. And he actually said at the end of the interview, no, well, we do what we say on the tin. We have to stop at 30 minutes. So actually, it's ridiculous that they have no limitations on them whatsoever to keep talking if they want to. And because they've called it Guyon Espiner with 30, he cut him off rather than perhaps pushing in deeper and getting a bigger part of the conversation. So even those guys who are, this is why I'm saying, and very arrogantly, that they don't know what they're doing. The guys who think that they're doing some kind of digital difference, they're just following the mainstream media package. You might as well have gone, well, it's 60 seconds to the hour. We have to go to the news, because basically what they're doing. Anyway, little bed bug of mine. Hey, I'm going to play you something as well. It's only a couple of minutes. I said I was going to do it. We've got a couple of other things to get to yet, but I wanted to play you this because we weren't here on Friday, and yesterday we had Chippy talking about, Chippy things. On Friday, when Donald Trump was found guilty on all 34 felony accounts, old mate, bottom left-hand corner, George Conway, gave a very synopsized reason as to why this happened. And I just wanted to play it for you to put to bed any sort of debate that may be out there. You ready for this?
If you don't want to be found guilty of falsifying business records and as a felony, don't sleep with the porn star. Don't lie about it. Don't pay her off. Don't cover up the payoff. Don't cover off the payoff in the middle of a presidential campaign and where you're making an illegal contribution, and don't gross the guy up for taxes who used as the front man. If you don't want to be held liable for rape like Donald Trump has, don't grab the woman's genitalia. If you don't want to be held liable for defaming the woman that you raped, don't keep lying about what you did and calling her a nut job. If you don't want to be indicted for overthrowing the Constitution, don't start a self-coup. If you don't want to be indicted for stealing classified documents and obstructing justice, don't take the classified documents. When the government asks for it back, give them back. If the FBI serves you with a search warrant, don't hide the documents, and don't lie about it, and don't have your lawyers lie about it. This isn't that hard. Donald Trump is not the victim here. Donald Trump does all of these things to himself. And I agree with David. I mean, once upon a time, the Republican Party was the party, not just of anti-hippies, but of personal responsibility and of law and order. What party? Where is that party? Here, no one's willing to hold, in the Republican Party, is willing to hold Donald Trump to account for his crimes that aren't really even in dispute. And no one is willing to call him out. Instead, he's going to get the nomination. That's just insane, and it just shows the degree of moral rot we have on the conservative side. of politics today.
There you go. I mean, succinct, to the point. If you don't want to be found guilty of being a rapist, then don't rape someone. If you don't want to be found guilty of being an insurrectionist, then don't cause an insurrection. You know, it's just, it was so, I saw that last Friday and I just thought I got to play that when we get back, because it's just a boom, 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 boom. Next topic, please.
I did see a nice sum up in text form. I hope I'm not mangling what I remember seeing, but it was like, so people are getting bent out of shape because Donald Trump paid $130,000 to someone he didn't sleep with for reasons. You know, it's just fuck. But like this is the moment that the Republican Party needs to. They need to. They won't have a moment of reflection and really go, is this our guy? Is the Republican Party savable at this point, or if we let the Tea Party and MAGA factions just grow too big, too powerful, we want to win at all costs. This is apparently our best bet, and we've got literally no one else in the cupboard
Yeah.
to put up against this utter raving, gibbering, rapist piece of shit. Like, that's the depth of your roster, is it? That you can't find someone better than this declining person. And that same criticism goes towards the Democrats as well.
Yeah, for
Have
sure.
you got no one better?
And remember as well, I'm pretty sure, I didn't play that part from the conversation though, that one of the jurors said that they only got their news from Truth Social. So they only got their news. But I think that's what they said. I'm pretty sure they said that. I mean, like, I guess I'm just repeating what Conway said, but I believe that's what he said as part of that as well. And that person didn't find not guilty on any one of the 34 charges.
Conway's a really good example, right? Why don't you judge your candidate based on the amount of disgruntled people that have worked with Trump and then been cast aside?
Yeah.
There are so many of them.
No one from his last cabinet, no one from his last, no one that he hired last time to work in the White House with him has endorsed him or is committed to voting for him. No one.
Like, and that's there. That's not a new thing. You look at his business as well. It's exactly the same. You look at his fucking TV show. It's exactly the same. Like, why anyone thought that he was the right person to put up. I think I still stand by the fact that people put him up as a candidate as a joke, and it has just got out of hand.
Yeah, well, I don't think I don't think at the start he wanted to win. He did it several times just to get publicity and to, you know, sell books or whatever, and then he won, and he kind of go, fuck, I guess I got to do it now.
And now he's gone, well, actually, I'm glad I did it because it's a fucking great way to fleece money from rubes.
Yep, and also get off a bunch of charges.
People are donating money to someone who boasts about how rich he is. Like, poor people give him money because they think that billionaire has somehow some form of relatability to these poor working class people because he says they hate. Oh, he hates who they hate, and that's enough. That's fucking cooked.
The enemy of my enemy
for
is
the final season of USA
or the world. All right. Okay. One last story we're going to get to today, I think, and we are going to feature it. It's only a 2.5 minute item. It's the story that sick leave is looking to be changed. Brooke Van Velden has arisen from her coffin, where she's been lying for the last month or so, unseen by anybody in daylight, to start talking about this. And we've got another example of the Prime Minister going back on a promise. Just another one, you know.
Major changes are on the way for how Kiwi workers' leave balances are handled. The government is proposing to change annual leave from an entitlement where you're only eligible after 12 months.
They're saying to make it more simple, but of course unions and stuff are going,
who asked for this?
It's always the most vulnerable, well, the business industries, It's always the most vulnerable that are going to be affected because they're talking about part-time workers really having the biggest change. And of course, part-time workers have the least money. They are the working poor from time to time. And they are the ones that'll be impacted most by these changes.
To something that has accrued from day one.
Under the plan, part-time workers would no longer be eligible to the full 10 days of sick leave full-time employees get. And as Isabel Ewing reports, that change to sick leave has left the Prime Minister accused of breaking a promise to voters.
A campaign trail promise is easy to make in the moment.
What about the 10 days sick leave? Would you revert that to 5?
Again, it is what it is now, and it's passed, and it's a 7.
So you won't.
Do you notice the stutter again, even back then? Remember how we've identified when he's lying, there's a stutter? I wonder if that means they had thought about it back then and he was just lying, or they didn't think about it at all. But that stutter came out.
Again, it is what it is now, and it's passed, and it's a 7.
So you won't.
Tricky to keep in a three-party coalition. Part-time workers could see their sick leave cut in half.
What we're saying is if you work the full work week, you'd be entitled to 10 days sick leave. If you work fewer hours than that, it would become proportional to the hours that you're...
So how much do you think we're now going to see 39-hour contracts, Chewy? 39, not 40 hours?
Oh, we see that now. I'm on
39 and a half
hour a week, 39-hour contract. Have been for years. I just like that Brooke thinks that part-time workers only get proportionally sick. That's weird. They don't get as sick as the full-time worker gets.
When they said, and it says this later in the thing, the guy goes, imagine someone working 1 day a week part-time. If they have 10 days off, that's 10 days out of 48. At that point I went, you know, when they say the devil's going to be in the detail, but you kind of go, that's a quarter of their year, basically. They can have, and I'm prepared to have the conversation some more, but I'm very concerned about it. As for the holiday pay, I actually quite like the idea of holiday pay starting to accrue from the day you're working, which means every 3 months you'll be owed a week's holiday rather than having to wait 12 months and then get it. I actually think that's on its. I'll put it this way, because I don't trust these guys, but from the outside looking in, that seems to be quite a good idea. That means after 3 months, I'll have a week's holidays due me already and not have to wait the full 12 months. I'm not against that idea.
I think it comes to the fact that I don't trust her either.
Yeah, that's
you're right. I was going to echo the same sort of thoughts. There is a nugget of a good idea in here, which is not an arbitrary time period going past before you're able to access these sort of things, but it accrues from when you work. I know some workplaces already do this, like mine does, as an example. You know, you start working, you start earning your holiday paid like that.
Yeah.
And I think it does come down to a payroll issue, what businesses are able to track that way. What I have a problem with is this is going after part-time workers' sick leave.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
There's a discomfort.
Show me your workings.
A disquiet in me going, why do you seem to be hampering the part-time workers? What's behind the headline? I need to see more. We'll keep playing, eh?
Because we don't need to see more.
No, we need to see less or see more.
That they do a lot of this with ideas that they have around workers' rights and stuff like that. We know the Act doesn't have workers' rights in mind, but when they talk about holidays and that sort of thing, they make it sound real cool. Oh, you get X amount of days off and you just take them whenever you want. That sounds great, but downstream effects of that are very, very different. And that's what I'm wary of whenever she's talking about this. She is not coming at it from a worker's benefit point of view.
Yeah. Yep. And that's the thing. Like, that's why I said openly and honestly at the start, some of these ideas don't sound terrible, but I don't trust them. I've never heard a sentence out of her mouth that's thought of the worker first. So I'm going, what else is going on here? I can understand at a surface level someone who works 1 day a week taking a quarter of the year off. I can see how that could be problematic, but I don't trust them. And I need to know more.
You miss 3 shifts in a row, or even 2 shifts in a row. Actually, you need to produce a doctor's note. Right. So, I mean, I think this is a problem that she's trying to solve that doesn't need solving.
Yeah. Okay, fair. We'll keep going, eh?
working.
I was really shocked to hear this proposal. This is a broken promise from the government.
The proposal to reduce sick leave entitlements for part-time workers is part of Brooke Van Velden's plan to fix up the complex and unwieldy Holidays Act. Also proposed changes to how...
I just don't think it's complex and unwieldy. I mean, I think businesses say that because they have to fucking pay time and a half and give a day at lieu. And so that seems to be the only complexity, might be that it costs businesses more. Other than that, what's the problem? If the public holiday falls on a weekend, it rolls over. You don't get time and a half and day in lieu if it's not your regular rostered shift. So if you work Mondays and it's a Monday, you get time and a half, day in lieu, all the day off. If you don't work Mondays and get called into that shift, you don't. I feel like you've just said something interesting, and I'm trying to rephrase it. They're searching for an answer to a question that doesn't need to be asked. You know, they're going, this is unwieldy. It's actually really not. I mean, I don't have employees. But it doesn't seem difficult from the outside looking in to get your head around.
Yeah, I've had to work out rosters and payroll for people, and the Holidays Act is not hard. There are two problems that you could solve, Brooke. Anzac Day needs to be a full day.
Yep.
And Easter needs a rejig. Because we haven't looked at Easter and how Easter holidays are worked out since before we had Sunday trading.
Right.
So in my case, I have a shift on Sunday, on Easter Sunday, right?
Yeah.
The shop can't open. The shop's not allowed to open.
Right.
But it isn't paid as a holiday. I don't have any choice in that. I have to take leave if I want to get paid for that.
Okay.
So Friday's a holiday, Monday's a holiday, Sunday not a holiday but can't open. That's fucked.
Yeah,
so
that, I mean, to me, to me, they would. That would seem that they should just have to pay you, because if you're available, because I know that lots in law, if I'm available to work and you don't use me, then you pay me. That would seem to be the easy answer there. That you get paid because you're available to work that Sunday. If they can't shut down, well, that's between them and the government. They should still have to pay the workers. That's how I would see it. But I don't know. All right, we'll keep on.
And the benefit for just real quick, the benefit for having everybody on the same holidays is for the people that usually have to work other holidays. There are very few days that someone like me that works in retail, that works all of these holiday days, can have a shared day off with other people.
Yeah.
With friends and family members. That's a social good. It won't come into her balance sheet, and that's all she cares about.
Yeah. And look, I'm doing what I can to make you a job offer sometime soon. All right? I'm working on it. Okay? I'm working on it. All right, let's keep going.
Annual leave is provided.
Instead of being entitled to 4 weeks annual leave after 12 months of continuous employment, we're bringing that forward so people are accruing week by week from the moment of employment.
See, that doesn't sound terrible.
Good idea.
I'm okay with that.
Association.
The legislation as it stands is very, very complicated, and that's why we've been pushing for a change for over a decade.
But unions say workers' rights are being eroded under the guise of simplifying the system.
It's never fair to attack people who already are at a disadvantaged situation. So part-time workers are likely to be earning less money, likely to be in more precarious situations, and in fact are just as likely to get sick as anybody else.
But it's also unfair on an employer to expect to carry a balance of 10 days sick leave for someone who, if you're working once a week, that's 48 days a year and you're getting 10 days sick leave.
See, I mean, if we're having a debate, I'd be like, okay, I can see your point, but the devil is in the details. The devil is in the details. I want to know more.
When does this fantastical theoretical kick in?
Of course. I mean, if you're working part-time 1 day a week, you probably can't afford to take any days off because you're likely a working poor or a student or something like that. You're probably looking for more work. So maybe it's semantics, maybe it's theoretical, but as I said, if we were having a debate and I was moderating it, I'd go, ding, he's made a point. You know, that's what I'm saying. That's
a big chunk.
Labor says there are problems with compliance with the Holidays Act and work was underway to improve it.
One of those issues was not that people got too much sick leave. That's a political, ideological question that the ACT Party believes in.
ACT also campaigned on scrapping matariki or swapping it out for one of the other statutory holidays. Brooke Van Velden said that's not on the table today. Details on proposed legislation will be released in September for targeted consultation with workers and businesses. Isabel Ewing, News Hub.
What about the idea of targeted consultation? Did you pick up on that? Targeted consultation, not open consultation, targeted.
No, we don't like open consultation.
How much do you want to bet the targets of that conversation will be heavily weighted towards business owners and people who employ lots of other people, as opposed to workers' rights advocates? Just guessing. Maybe I'm being a bit pessimistic, but targeted. Chewy.
Join a union. Join a union. Join a union. They are coming for your rights. And if they do get in to a second term in government, they will come even harder for your workers' rights. And you might have the privilege of having a good, understanding employer. All of that can change in a heartbeat. It's one of those things. You can't always trust your employer. Yeah. Things are good until they're not.
Yep.
And I think, as we've said, there's a nugget of a good idea here, and that is an excellent cover to wrap around all of the other bullshit that might come from this discussion.
All right, let's get some of these super chats. Peter says, who's funding ACT, the Funeral Directors Association? That came in quite soon after we put up our little meme there, made by one of you lovely people in Discord, if you want to check it out for yourself and steal it like I did and put it up there. We can also, I thank you for your super chat, Peter. Gold also says, you're all better people than I. I wish the big C upon the worst human. It has all the power of thoughts and prayers, the primary power that stops mass shootings in the US. A little bit dark, but fair enough, Gold. You're entitled to your opinion. You're entitled to your opinion. What does Campbell say? Campbell, thank you for the super chat. This is the problem with a post-treaty society that doesn't properly understand what it's about. How about investing in education about the treaty rather than erasing it? There you go. Spend the money in education.
As a history nerd, yes. And this is what they're afraid of. We have a generation coming through that have been taught about the treaty, that have had a more balanced understanding that, not just from the European side of what the treaty was, but having the Māori side as well. And when those guys come through and they go, hang on, this is bullshit. And this is why you often get right-wing governments that really focus in on things that are being taught in schools, and especially how history is being taught in schools.
Yeah.
So that's what they're afraid of. That's why they don't want younger people voting. That's why they're afraid of this cohort of inspirational young Māori that are coming through. Those guys are going to be a fucking powerhouse, and I cannot wait.
You mentioned being a history nerd. I was just thinking, I texted you earlier as well, saying it's the 80th anniversary of D-Day.
Oh yes, you did.
And I just trying to find a story from One News. I haven't got it on YouTube and I can't find it on their page, but they did a bit of a recce over there. And the bit that got me choked up was there was an image on One News of the story. There's a whole bunch of 97, 98, 99 and 100-year-olds going across to Normandy. And there was an image, and it showed it twice in the news story, of two current serving soldiers. They would have been in their mid-20s on either side of this 97-year-old, helping him stand as they were looking around. And I just went, oh, because it's kind of like, it was ironic, because I reckon those two serving soldiers would have been in their mid-20s holding someone up to have a look around the grounds who was probably 17 or 18 when he went over there. So far younger than they were right then. It was an emotional moment watching that story on One News tonight, Chewy. And I know that you could talk about it for 4 hours. We are wrapping up towards the end, but do you want to say anything on it before we go to the last of these chats?
Yeah, so I've been to Normandy. I've been to Gold Sword, Juneau, and Omaha Beach in 2015. And it is a strange thing to see something that you have read about so much, and there's been movies done and all of that sort of thing, and to see those old bunkers, to see the cliffs that were scaled at Point de Hoc and all of that sort of thing, and then walk those beaches, walk the enormous American cemetery that's there as well. And I think in the scheme of things, that was an operation that they didn't know was gonna work. Famously, Eisenhower had 2 letters written that morning, one announcing that it was a successful operation, the second his announcement that he was resigning because it had failed.
Right.
It was the Western Allies really kicking in the back door to Germany, and hopefully sort of helping Russia push Germany back inside their own borders. It was a global effort to defeat fascism. And I think I always sit there when I look at fascism creeping back and dictatorships and all of the ugly things that we thought we'd jammed back in the box for World War II creeping back in. If we let it go, that's the level of struggle and sacrifice that you have to put in to get rid of it again. So I'd rather we didn't. So maybe we just strangle fascism in the cradle wherever we see it.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
All right. Any chance you're going to chat about the massive cuts to the anti-white supremacist terrorism research? It was on RNZ this morning. We might look at that for tomorrow. We had a full show tonight. Unlimited sick. Oh, thank you for the super chat, James. Unlimited sick leave work, says Dave Monster. $2. Thank you for your super chat. Gareth says they are becoming the epitome of a cliche movie villain. This is talking about the current government for a super chat. Thank you for the super chat, Gareth. And because I care, thank you for the super chat. They have the data. Why don't they tell us how many people work one day a week? It's a very, very good question. Very good question.
And
also,
I think this is a good example, right, Pat, for exactly the reasons that you said. He puts it out there, you evaluate it and go, well, that's potentially a good fact. Maybe it's something we need to think about. But it's such a straw man. It's such this doesn't happen. Like if you have a worker that works one day a week and you'll say that he's going to be off for like 48 days or whatever, when does that ever happen?
Yeah, doesn't.
Never would be my guess. And employers have rights under that to ask for a doctor's note.
What?
There's not a doctor in the world that's going to go, yes, this person is definitely sick enough to be off for half the year. It's just like he's putting it like that. Oh, this is this unsolvable problem that we've never been able to deal with, and it's costing us megabucks. It's fucking not. It's fiddling around rats and mice at the edges to dress up a way to attack workers' rights. The Manufacturers and Employment Association can get in the fucking sea.
All right, team. I want to say a big thanks to Bufferers United, to Fuggle Nugget, to Detective Boyd, to Katarina, to Ben, to Keith Sims, to Kenneth Black, and to Brian Turner, who are all our latest. Did you laugh at Fuggle Nugget?
That's a great name.
Fuggle Nugget. Nugget. Who are our latest patrons to sign up. If you're enjoying what we do, if you want to be a part of what we do, head to patreon.com/Big Hairy News. And thank you to the people who are already there. You help us do what we do. And I guess we'll probably see you tomorrow night from 9 p.m.
And sure, they got the news. Big Hairy style, keeping it loose. New Zealand, where the politics play, they bring the truth every single day. Talking about the mess all over the land. They shine a light with a mic in their hand. No time for cheese, just facts straight up. Cape to Bluff, no place too far. Expose the truth and raise the bar. Politicians tremble at their mighty voice. Pat and shoe, they'll make the right choice.
All right, lovely people. Anything else, Joe, for the night to wrap up with?
No.
Thanks so much for being with us tonight. Huge thanks to Malcolm Mulholland joining us to talk about the situation. Keep the pressure on. I mean, email, write, get in touch with your local MP about these cancer drugs. Stay on top of them. And we'll stick at it together. If you want to support what we do, it's patreon.com/Big Hairy News. Here's a bunch of our patrons who help us out every single month, and we appreciate you all very, very much. We'll catch you from tomorrow at 9 p.m. for another edition of Big Hairy News. Hooroo.